Have you ever looked at your career, one that is by all means very successful on paper, and then caught yourself thinking that it now seems almost meaningless? What do you do when you've accomplished the thing that you worked so hard for, but you can no longer imagine doing it for another 20 years? Today, I'm joined by Dr. Shahrzad Rafiee, an emergency physician turned therapist, and we're talking about burnout, moral injury, identity shifts, career pivots, and what happens when you stop asking yourself what you should do and start asking yourself what you actually want. Welcome to Burnout-Free Me, your success and well-being podcast. I'm Dr. Amy Grimm, and I am so glad you're here. Let's go from burnout to breakthrough together. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Burnout-Free Me. Today is a special guest episode, and this conversation is for anyone who has ever looked around at the life they worked incredibly hard to build and thought, why doesn't this feel the way I thought it would? My guest today is Dr. Shahrzad Rafiee, who goes by the name Mushi. Mushi is an emergency physician, associate marriage and family therapist, speaker, and educator who has spent years caring for people on some of the worst days of their lives. And somewhere along the way, she found herself asking questions that medicine alone couldn't answer. Questions about burnout, emotional health, identity, and meaning. And what makes this conversation today so powerful is that Dr. Rafiee has lived on both sides of that divide. After years of caring for patients in the emergency department, she's expanded her work to include psychotherapy and helping healthcare professionals and other high-achieving individuals navigate stress and burnout, anxiety, and the emotional demands of modern life. Now, Mushi understands the reality of practicing medicine in a high-pressure system. She understands what it feels like to love your work and still feel exhausted by it. And through her work, she's developed this deeper understanding of the emotional skills, self-awareness, and healing practices that many of us were never taught, despite desperately needing them. And in this episode, we're going to talk about just that. Burnout, moral injury, emotional intelligence, nervous system regulation, career pivots, and the uncomfortable reality that success and fulfillment are not always the same thing. So this is one of those conversations that will probably challenge some assumptions, validate experiences that many people struggle to put into words, and hopefully leave you feeling a little less alone. I am so delighted to have her here today. So, Dr. Shahrzad Rafiee, welcome to Burnout-Free Me.
Thank you. Happy to
Yeah,
be here.
thank you for coming. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you today. I wanted to start out by asking about your journey into therapy. You practiced emergency medicine for a long time. In fact, you still practice. And then you decided, as if that wasn't enough, you're now going to become a therapist too. So I would really love to hear more about that journey and what that has looked like, that evolution. What's that looked like for you?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. A little bit nervous, but excited more. I've been an ER doctor for, if I count residency, it'll be 29 years, I think. I graduated in 2000 and have been working at my ER for since then. And I love emergency medicine, but I don't love our medical system. And navigating our medical system in the emergency department has become increasingly difficult every single year I've been practicing, and probably pandemic to this way, it's just worse in on every level. And I think it was during pandemic where I realized I couldn't look forward and see myself doing this another 20 years. It was just,
Mm.
too much. And I mean, so that's the age-old question between me and most of the ER docs that I work with is what's your exit plan? Like how, how are you gonna, what are you gonna do when this is no longer doable? And I didn't really know what I was going to do. A lot of physicians at my like 20 years and 20 years plus, they pivot to either administrative work or they'll work for like as expert witnesses for the legal industry or pivot towards the insurance industry and work in some capacity for them or the pharmaceuticals. And I've spent so many years of my life doing things that I don't want to spend any more time in things that are not meaningful to me. And so what pivoted me towards therapy was I kind of saw what a profound impact therapy could have on people. If you along your life arc connected with a therapist at the right time, and it could be transformative. I experienced that in the setting of my teenage kids who we did brief therapy for one of them. And I was just kind of inspired by that and experienced it for myself as well. And so I thought, hmm, I I could maybe I could become a therapist, go to school, and then have that kind of impact in people's lives as well. It's meaningful to me.
Hmm. That's beautiful. I'm curious, what drew you to the choice of becoming a therapist? There's other options out there like licensed social workers, coaching,
Uh,
mentorship, all kinds of
yeah,
things.
yeah. I kind of felt like so. Um, My husband has worked at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and he's been there forever. And they're affiliated with USC. And if you're a spouse of someone like that, the tuition is 50% off. There was a tuition waiver, so I kind of was like, I could. It was economically, it made sense. And
Hmm.
two, I felt like. I mean, I have a life experience and I can share that, but I don't know if my life experience translates to other people. Like if it worked for
Hmm.
me, that's great, but I don't know if it works for other people. But I think therapy is, I don't know, so much of, I feel, and believe that so much of what I bring to my life today in whatever capacity is directed by what I've experienced in my past. And I think therapy was a way for me to be able to understand how my past affects my current, present, and future. And it, it, I just felt that that was the way to go.
Hmm.
And yeah, I really enjoyed the process. I really learned a lot in my therapy program. I almost feel like everyone should it's information that everyone should learn growing up. It'd be helpful. And so yeah, that's how that choice was made.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It's almost like it feels so empowering, especially the way that you're talking about it and how your face is just lighting up when you're talking about your future and direction and everything.
It's funny because if we would have had this conversation when I was in my 20s, I would have had this same spark and energy towards medicine. If you were going to be like, oh, you're going to be a doctor, what kind? And it was going to be emergency medicine all the way. And it was meaningful to me. It really was. I, I, looking back, I probably I shouldn't say this. I probably would have I don't know, I was destined to be an ER doc. That was just from my whole life experience. But I think the life arc I've come through now, yeah, what feels meaningful to me is um possibly bringing transformation to other people's lives the way I experienced it.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up because, 20 years ago, I also would have been like vet med all the way, and this is what I'm going to do. And I was extremely passionate about it at that time. I still am passionate about it, but in a different way. And I sense you kind of have a similar kind of feeling there. And one thing about entering veterinary medicine, and I find this, it's kind of a generalization, but I think it's true across all professions, is we get told that, this is the profession, this is the job, this is what your career is going to look like, here's what you're supposed to do. And you had mentioned something earlier when you were talking about being in practice for 20, 25 years and how other physicians start to change into administrative roles or other
Mhm.
things. And I feel like there can be a lot of guilt or shame around that sometimes because that's not the way that we were told, right? You're
Yeah.
going to go into this, you're going to do it forever, then you're going to retire.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you speak to a little bit of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it's like the happily ever after myth. And also and again, this is my personal opinion. I don't have any studies to back this up, but I feel like there's a gender kind of like a gender overlay on this with what you were talking about is that as women, when you're young, when you're a girl, the path is you go to school, get some kind of education, maybe have a family, get married, have kids, and then what's there left? What's left? Like there's nothing left. And it's the same. You become a doctor, and what is left? You just do your work, and for the rest of your life. And I kind of feel like at this point, it's very unscripted, and that's completely liberating. So yeah, I've been there, done that. And now it's at a point where I don't find it satisfying and I don't find the work that I'm doing as meaningful as I wanted it to be. And now it's wide open. So I could pivot to something else that's meaningful to me. And I also feel like the path, probably the same for veterinary medicine as it is for human medicine, is so long. You spend so much of your life in school, and like delayed gratification forever, put so many years of hard work in, and then uh I don't know, completely tra lost my train of thought. It just I don't know, it's hard to pivot, but I feel like
Mhm.
I don't want to spend any more of my time or energy doing something that's not meaningful to me, whether it's an industry in another industry that I have even less faith and belief in as our current medical
Yeah.
system. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for being so honest about that. And I think it's also a beautiful point that you bring up. Like, it's okay to give yourself permission to find meaning in something else. Because I know for me and some of the other veterinarians with whom I've worked, it's almost, like you're ripping your identity apart in some
yeah,
way because this is who I am and what I do. And I didn't even know if I was allowed to become a coach. And there's
yeah,
also this level of like respect or prestige that's associated with
yeah,
being a
yeah,
doctor. And then I had all of this self-judgment about how other people were going to judge me if I said, hey, actually, I'm going to be a life coach now. And most people are like, I don't even know what that is.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I hear you. I completely understand. And it's different. It's in a way it's scary, but it's the pivot is I find liberating. I don't want to spend any more of my short life, whatever's left of it, doing something that fits someone else's script. That
Mhm.
whether it's like a prestigious job, an accepted trajectory, the next accepted step. I don't want to do
Mhm.
that. It's funny, I don't know if this is connected to what we're talking about, but I recently went to a therapy conference in San Diego and I went to a burnout lecture during that conference. And it was fascinating because it was with a room full of therapists, social workers, people in the helping field of, this kind of this in this realm, and many of them were veteran therapists and were burned out. So I was sitting there as like a new therapist who's like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, excited, and but a very, very crispy ER doctor who's like, okay. And so my burned out part could connect to their therapist burned out part, but my excited therapy part, like the new therapist, was like I felt like it was kind of a weird juxtaposition of old
Yeah. Yeah. And
old
it's so
burnout to new burnout.
It's so interesting that you bring that up because, many times when I'm talking more with people on the organizational level, or say, like a clinic owner, people in academia, especially education, the conversation is very much centered around how do we stop veterinarians from burning out so that we can keep them in the profession? And for me as a coach, it's like, well, it's not really my job to make them want to stay. My job is
Yeah.
to help them discover, what do they find meaningful, what brings them fulfillment. And for some of them, it is going to be that more traditional career where they're a general practitioner for their entire
Hmm.
lives and then they retire. And for many, many others, it's more like you and I, where it's like, well, now it's kind of different. And
Hmm.
maybe I am a little burnt out in this particular area, but this new one lights me up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. I also feel like when we talk about burnout, we're lumping so many things in there that
Yes.
there it's nuanced, and when you just call it burnout, it misses the boat. So burnout can occur in so many professions. I mean, you can, I don't know, be an accountant and be burned out. And I think it's a different kind of, I mean, emotional ex I know the three things that we define burnout with: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and being cynical. That can be across professions and mostly in helping professions, medicine, law enforcement, first response, even the legal industry, like they have their own kind of burned out. But when we're talking about, I feel like that helping professions, there are things like more, I think we talked about it before, moral injury or
Hmm.
vicarious trauma or being in contact with other people's suffering and their pain. I think that brings a special kind of like empathy-based stress to our realm and our work that's different than burnout you'd experience as a air traffic controller. So
Hmm.
and I think that gets missed in a lot of our conversations about, longevity and staying in the field you're in. So I don't know, been kind of doing a deep dive into that recently as well.
Oh, interesting. What is this deep dive? Are you able to share
No,
anything ahead
I'm
of
just
time? Or?
I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around, so when we're talking about, let's say, burnout versus vicarious trauma, what does that mean? Or when we're talking about moral injury, how's that different than burnout? And
Hmm.
I mean, are these things we can separate them? Are they relevant? Do we address them differently? So if someone comes and says, I don't know if I want to be a doctor anymore, I put a decade of my life into this and I'm miserable, I'm unhappy, I'm unsatisfied, and I'm resentful for spending all my time doing things that are no longer meaningful to me. Um, I think depending on what exactly they're experiencing, whether it's like traditional burnout versus they're suffering from moral injury or vicarious trauma, I think that is important in terms of trying to hone in on helping someone decide whether they're at a point where they need to leave or if they're at a point where they can make changes or change their own paradigm to be able to function within the current system.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, that's very, very sensible. And I really appreciate you taking the time to say that because that's one of my pet peeves with social media is that it's all distilled down into this very superficial, like, this is burnout, quit your job, go do something else. And like you said, it's very nuanced. Sometimes it
Yeah,
requires a new approach or mindset or
yeah,
even tweaks to the system, how things are done. Other times it does require you leaving that job and going somewhere else, or maybe going into a completely different
yeah,
profession. I mean,
yeah.
there's so many different options, and it's very personal. Burnout's not just like this blanket statement that everybody needs to like do this to get out of it.
Yeah. And here's your 10-point checklist, make sure you sleep and make sure you eat and move your body and get enough sun and make connections, and then it's all going to be okay. I think there's like a little bit more nuance to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And coming back to, this pivot that so many professionals they feel this pressure in their careers. From your experience now, your personal experience as a physician, becoming a therapist and then also through, the people around you, those that you're helping, if somebody else is kind of feeling this tug and that running on empty that you were
Yeah.
describing, how do you know that you are moving toward something rather than
Yeah.
simply trying to run away from
Yeah.
where you are?
What a hugely important question because I feel like that's what a lot of time, I mean, speaking for myself, I started moving away, didn't really know where I was moving towards until something kind of hooked me and it felt meaningful. And then all of a sudden I could laser focus. That's what I'm, that's where I'm going. Not, I'm just running away from what's behind me. What a good question. And I think that I feel like that's the kind of thing we can explore in the therapeutic space because there's so much that goes into that question of what are you running away from, what do you want, where are you going, and why. And I think that yeah, I really like that. That's so individual and so personal, and that's kind of like a deep dive that you do with a
Mhm.
person.
Yeah, yeah. I find that many times, when I'm working with a coaching client, it can be very difficult for them to actually answer the question of, what do I want? They can give me like a million things of what they don't want and
Yeah,
what they're
yeah,
moving away from.
yeah.
Yeah, and it
Which is,
takes
I mean,
time.
that's hugely important. I mean, I think knowing what you don't want is really important, but that's not the same as what, okay, we know it's not this, but
Yeah.
what is it, you know?
Yeah, like moving away from the thing that you don't want isn't necessarily the direction that you do ultimately want to go. And I think that's where those really fun conversations open up.
Yeah,
And, it comes back to, your life experience and what do you value? And have you
yeah,
actually given yourself permission to imagine those things
yeah,
or even think that they're possible for you anymore? Because somewhere
yeah,
along the line, we get
yeah.
beaten down.
Yeah, no, no, very early along the line, I think we get beaten down, like super early. And that I think that exploration is not a one and done conversation. Like, okay, let's have a 50-minute session. In that 50-minute session, we're gonna exactly figure out where you've been, why you're there, where you're going, and what's meaningful to you. There's a lot of exploration and reflection and time, like just to let it settle and then not jump from one frying pan into the next. When I first started thinking about maybe I can become a therapist, can I become a therapist? Do I have the temperament to become a therapist? And I talked about it with some of my closer friends. They'd look at me and I think people listening who are seasoned therapists might look at me and say the same thing is you're going from being an ER doctor, which is a really stressful job, to becoming a therapist, and that's going to be less stressful, because you're still talking to people and holding space for their pain and suffering.
Mhm.
And that is true. I mean, I can understand that, and I think it's a valid concern, valid point. But I also and I don't believe that every person I work with is going to have this amazing transformation, but that potential is 100% there, and that's meaningful and inspiring to me, and I'm
Mhm.
willing to like go down that rabbit hole with people.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm kind of teasing apart this idea that something that struck me on my journey to becoming a coach, and tell me if you felt something similar, where we are listening to, people's traumas sometimes and past experiences and heavy things, but it was really the training that I received that has now made me more able or better able to
Yeah,
deal with that and hold space and not become so emotionally charged myself.
yeah,
And if I chose to, I could probably go back to practicing as a veterinarian full time and have a completely different experience now, knowing that I have these tools that I just never had
had
before.
before.
Yeah, and I made the decision that I want to focus more on the coaching because I would like to bring this to more people. And at the same time, I'm holding this other idea of like, yeah, I probably would have done a lot better if I'd known all this stuff that I didn't know
That's
back
true.
then.
That's
Yeah.
true. that makes so much sense. I mean, 100%. And you actually may end up doing that in some capacity for a very long time,
Yeah.
which is ironic. I mean, ironic in a good way.
Yeah, it's like just the circles upon circles of everything being so interconnected.
If we go back to burnout for just a second, using it as a generic concept, there was some study I think that was recently published in New England Journal of Medicine and about burnout. And the one thing, and I think this is true, the one thing that mitigates burnout 100 like very effectively is just decreasing your exposure to work. Like don't work as much. But that's not an option for so many people. Like you
Hmm.
have financial obligations. You can't just be like, "Oh, I'm not going to work." So but it's funny that if you are able to decrease your exposure to work and find meaning in like your coaching or my doing therapy, and that kind of then feeds back with the skills that you've learned to be in an environment like for me ER where it is stressful, but I do have a new way of or a different way of addressing myself and addressing what's in front of me that allows me to have longevity for the duration. So it's like I was burned out. I tried to leave, but then I found my way back in a way that is sustainable.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's just so fascinating how many different options that then opens up for you because, your mind is almost freed in a way. And
Yeah.
for me, I now do some like speaking presentation type things, which I never thought I would do.
Mhm.
You are now doing education as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
and writing,
Yeah.
which I didn't
Yeah.
know about till you sent me that cool article, and I
Yeah.
was hoping we could touch on
Yeah,
that.
of course, 100%. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So I will put a link to it in the show notes. It's in Psychology Today.
Hmm.
And you were writing about how executive function, so, the part of our brain that does all the thinking and planning and decision making, how that can really be affected by things like chronic stress and sleep
Yeah.
deprivation and emotional overwhelm and
Yeah.
burnout and all of
Yeah.
these things. And that really affects our capacity to focus and to
Yeah.
plan and regulate emotions and to
Yeah.
get shit done, which for
Yeah.
many like high responsibility women, like
Yeah.
we want to be productive and efficient and we want to do the things and we want to show up and serve. And suddenly our mind is just not working. And
Yeah.
one of the things that really stood out to me in your article was that, you point out that what looks like laziness or
Yeah.
lack of motivation or not really caring is often more of a nervous system problem. It's like the actual system is asking for restoration and
Yeah.
not receiving it. And I see so many women who are exhausted and overwhelmed and
Yeah.
running on empty. And a lot of times they come to the conclusion that it's because they're failing and they're not doing it
Yeah.
right. And I wasn't cut out for this career.
Yeah.
So can you speak a little bit to that? And, why are we so
Yeah.
quick to make our capacity mean something about our self-worth?
Yeah. No, 100%. It's true. It's I don't know. I think it's like that for it's like that from when you're a child. I feel that if you can't, it's because, you're either too much this or not enough that. You're either too emotional or, too sensitive, or you're just not like resilient enough or not strong enough. And I also think that when we like for me, it's the emergency department and it feels like a stress test for our executive functioning system. But we look at it through the lens of pathology, like, oh, I have ADHD, I can't do this. And I think for most people, when we're in our environments that tax us because we're running on overdrive and trying to overfunction and overplan and make sure everything's okay. I mean, that level of you using the bandwidth of your mind, it will deplete anyone. And it's, I think, stepping away from it and instead of looking at it as a personal failure, like I can't do this or I didn't or I was unable to, it really shifts your paradigm when you can think of it as I'm totally depleted. Like I am depleted. If you cannot run a marathon and then be like, how come I can't go do that hot yoga class right now? I suck. Okay, I did the marathon, but like I didn't do that. And but if you can look at it as, yeah, you're tired, you're depleted, you don't have any more. I mean, you're like your battery charge is at 2%. You charge the phone. You don't like beat the phone up and yell at it and be like, what kind of phone is this? And Apple sucks. And you charge it, you plug it in and you let it replenish itself. And I feel like for us, uh, man or woman, but professionals, high functioning individuals, whatever, we do tend to be our own harsh critic and kind of self-judge ourselves and look at our inability at that particular time as a failing, where we could look at it and be like, you know what, you hadn't eaten, you didn't sleep for the past 3 days, and you were really stressed out about that. Of course, your brain didn't do what you wanted it to do. Maybe take your foot off the gas for a second, ease up, your grips, and give yourself like half a day to rest, recharge, replenish, and you'll be okay. I mean, you'll find the capacity to do what you need to do. And
Hmm.
yeah, I feel like many of us overachiever people haven't really had the space to take a breath and pause and then go again.
Yeah. Yeah, I can just feel my own body being like, "Oh yeah, we recognize that experience."
And I mean, I think that's across every career. I think that's honestly, that's like living modern life with information coming at you all the time and the pace of it being breakneck speed. It's really kind of, you do yourself a huge service to take a minute, take a breath, take a pause,
Hmm.
and then take an intentional step.
Yeah, I'm curious, how are you having these conversations with the people you work with, whether that be, you're on the floor and some of your coworkers and colleagues are losing it, or maybe it's in your practice or now as a educator helping students. What is the conversation like? Because, you mentioned things like pause, take a breath, like eat, sleep, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, but then there's that whole other like wellness industry that turns it into a
Yeah.
checklist of everything
Yeah.
that you need to do.
Yeah, I feel like talking about wellness, bringing up the word burnout, bringing up the words mindfulness, it does it to myself. It causes the internal eye roll to go in, and like I'm like, okay, whatever. There's nothing you're gonna tell me that's gonna change what's going on right now, and that might be true. Uh, it's hard to have the conversations because these are softer conversations, and these skills, and they completely are skills that we can learn that help us navigate. They're soft skills, or they're looked at as soft skills. So having this conversation isn't it's also, it's not a one and done. It's maybe like with a little bit of humor or levity at the time, some of these ideas can be introduced. And it's hard because they're not topics that you can lecture on it, but a lot of times when you're lecturing on it, people are nodding and they're like, yeah, of course I know, yeah, what, you're not really telling me anything. So it's kind of a weird, it's hard to find the right space and time to be able to be like holistically take a look and say, maybe don't do that, or maybe consider this.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I think in the context of relationships, it works better. So maybe not so much in a lecture hall or in the moment, but if I have an established relationship with someone and, we know each other, it's more of a side conversation. Hey, remember when that happened? What do you think about, or how do you conceptualize, or could this have been different? Was there a different way to have done that? You know, I don't know. Or you
Yeah.
model it. I feel like since I've become a therapist, when I'm in the emergency department, my own approach is a little bit softer than it used to be. And not always, like if I'm really stressed, I revert back to my ER mode. But when I have the space to be therapist a little bit in the ER, especially with patients, um, it kind of like hits them. I get people crying. I get a lot of patients like breaking down in the moment because they're expecting kind of a harsh judgment, and they get space and no judgment, And I think that disarms people because most people go through life expecting to kind of be criticized. Why did you leave against medical advice? Why didn't you come in sooner? Why did you? And when that question is not asked with like a pointed, I don't know, a Sharpie point, people kind of really respond to that
Hmm.
most of the times with tears.
Yeah, yeah, it's like they finally feel seen and somebody's actually listening to them instead of lecturing them.
Yeah, and that's not most people's experience, especially when they interface with the emergency department. They're already in a pretty bad place to come there. Most people don't want to come, and when they come there, they're faced with a system that's not really geared towards I don't want to say not helping them, but our ability to fix the problems that come our way is very limited. The social, I mean, I may be able to fix your, acute injury at that time, but the larger forces that govern your life that put you in like the compromised position you're at, I'm unable to fix within our system. And our system
Hmm.
is kind of geared towards profits most of the times. I know I'm using big broad brush strokes
Yeah.
right now, but it's not geared towards taking care of people in the way they need to be cared for. And so when they're met with non-judgment and non-criticism, they it disarms them.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, and it's almost that's why we got into the fields that we did, right? To help people. And yeah, it's
Uh, yeah, I think that's kind of where the moral injury part comes in, where many of us went in to help, and then we find that the help we're able to give is not really the help that's needed, and it's a repeated cycle of a bigger system that churns and burns through not just its patients, but its practitioners as well. And then at some point, you start thinking, I didn't spend a decade of my life going into all this debt and giving up my nights and weekends and lives to not be able to actually do what I want to do, you
mhm.
know? So it could have been even maybe it was a mm, misguided uh like idea that I or we went into the helping medicine profession in where you wanted to help everyone all the time. That's not necessarily an achievable goal either. So maybe it's a matter of adjusting expectations.
Yeah, yeah, because as the high achiever, you want to help all the people and you want it to be really
Do
efficient
all the
and to
things.
run on
Yeah.
schedule and nothing's
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
go wrong.
Yeah. So like maybe adjusting that expectation to be like, to some extent it is what it is and you do what you can and are okay with that.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, and I'm curious about your perspective now as a physician and a therapist. What is something you believe about burnout? And I'm putting it in quotation marks because it's such a
Yeah.
all-encompassing term right now. But what is something you believed about burnout as a physician that you no longer believe as a therapist? What's changed for you?
Um I this is my personal experience. It may not translate to other people, but I lived in a very black and white space. I lived in a very I don't know, there was a finality to how I thought life was and how I moved through it, which was I kind of found isolating and it was my approach to life prior to becoming a therapist was one that would put me more at risk for burnout, to become emotionally exhausted and jaded and feel like nothing I do makes a difference anyway. Um, and I didn't really believe people changed. I kind of thought you were how you are, and that's who you are, and you may change a little bit, but not that much through the arc of your life. And on this side of where I'm at right now, having become a therapist and working as one, I 100% believe people can change. it's not easy, and many people won't because it's hard to change, but it 100% is possible, and it doesn't have to be. There's a different way to live. And when you can take some time to make those changes that will allow you to live with much more ease and with a sense of being balanced and centered. Not to say everything is balanced in your life, but you're in a place of being centered and balanced. It's a different way of moving through life so that that emotional exhaustion and that feeling of it doesn't matter anyway, that doesn't exist for me the way it used to at all. And so I don't know, it's kind of a non-answer answer because it's kind of like a transformation where my position towards life and the way I approach it has changed and shifted. And it makes a
Mhm.
big difference. And I think that if I was able to do that, um, being the incredibly stubborn individual that I am, and many of us are, if I could do that, anybody else can do that. It just takes some effort.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and I love that, and I think it kind of speaks to my experience too, just that becoming someone different and having that different life, which I also just thought like this is the way it is, this is who
Yeah,
I am, this is who
yeah.
you are. These are always going to be problems. Like, it was very black and white, and yeah,
Yeah, I
like
mean you probably still are the person that you have been, and I am the same person that I didn't like. It's not like I changed the core of who I
mhm.
am, but how I relate to the things that come across my path are very different, and it makes all the difference in the world,
Yeah,
I
yeah, and
find.
that's a good point that you bring up because yeah, I'm still the same Amy.
Yeah,
I'm just much more able to be in touch with that more regulated side when I'm making decisions or when I'm looking at a problem instead of immediately just becoming activated or, the other like nothing matters.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
never gonna change. And yeah, for me, I I had this idea that my burnout was the fault of everything around me. And in some ways, the system does contribute to, our
yeah,
exhaustion and our,
yeah.
overscheduling, chronic overwork, that kind of stuff. But what was a very big shift for me was when I stepped away from that full time and moved into coaching,
Mm.
some of those habits I was bringing with me. And I was like, oh, wait, part of this is a me problem too,
Yeah, yeah. No, it's true. It's like you don't know how deeply you are sleeping when you're asleep, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, well, that was really deeply asleep. I mean, when you're so in it, it's really difficult to separate what's from external, what's internal. But once you can get a little bit distance from it, it feels
Mhm.
like then you can start to see things from a different vantage point.
Yeah, and it took me quite a while because I would be the person who's like, okay, I'm gonna get up early and get all this stuff done, and then it would be lunchtime, and I'd be like, well, I'm not finished with this like email yet, so I'm gonna keep working through lunch. And then before I knew it, it was like 5 o'clock, and I'd be like, well, I still have some other things that I want to get done before tomorrow, so I'm just gonna sit on the couch. And yeah, all of these things that I thought were purely external and, like my boss forcing me or the hospital manager
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it took a while to really come out of that and be like, oh, like things can be different and I don't
yeah,
have to respond that way.
yeah,
Yeah. That was
yeah.
a very interesting
How long
discovery.
how long did it take you to be able to kind of do the meta Amy and see like how long did that
Yeah.
process take you?
Oh man, I wish I could say it was shorter than it was. But I would say it probably took a couple years, and it wasn't just complete ignorance the whole time. It was more developing that awareness and, you know, catching myself after the fact and then eventually being able to catch myself in the moment and be like, no, girl, you really do need
Yeah,
to eat and step
yeah,
outside.
yeah, yeah,
And then to the version that I am now where I can plan for that. Like, I know
yeah,
what my brain is
yeah,
going to tell me to do because that part doesn't truly just disappear. It's
yeah,
always there with us. But even now, I'll still sometimes catch myself wanting to, just work a little bit more, like get that extra thing done. And I have to have a discussion with myself and say, okay,
yeah,
like what is the pros of doing this? What am I going to miss
yeah,
out on if I don't? But before, I never would have had that conversation. It would have just been me plowing away and then blaming everything around me for
yeah.
feeling.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, you're speaking and I'm like, yeah, yeah, no, definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and one thing that I'm kind of curious about, since you are the official first therapist to be on Burnout-Free Me, so I have somewhat of a, not so much a technical question, but more just about the soft skills and especially
yeah,
the feelings, because there's so many of us who are more up in our heads and
yes,
it's difficult. We don't know what it means to feel your feelings or to like process things in your body. So, as
yeah,
a therapist, like, could you kind of explain to us, what is the difference between intellectualizing your feelings
yeah,
and actually processing them and
yeah.
moving through them?
Yeah, I feel like that's been my own learning arc, because I came from a place of like feelings. They're inconvenient. I want to have nothing to do with them. And I've plowed through every problem of my life basically with my brain, thinking about it, strategizing it, and working through it. But I kind of feel like, and so it's been like taking blinders off and recognizing that kind of my feelings are a whole additional information system that I can use to guide me. It's almost like a new set of maps or a new set of like hands. And when you truncate that, you're like cutting off vital information that helps you navigate. And so, yeah, it's kind of hard to feel certain feelings that are unpleasant. Like, how nice would it be to be able to turn off, fear and sadness and despair and lack of hope? Like, it would be nice to be able to turn that off, but all that is information for you. And if you're able to slow it down, feel the emotions as they're happening in your body. So you got angry, that really made you angry. And then if you can in the moment, it doesn't even have to be in the moment in the beginning, but if you can just be like, I got angry because, you know, that was really unfair. It wasn't my fault that that patient started yelling at me. I can use that as information instead of reacting. It's just my ability to connect with my emotions and feel them in my body, because that's what my body is doing, giving me information, and then use that to make a better choice in terms of the behaviors that I'm going to exhibit. That process of integrating my mind with my body, with my feelings, puts me in a place of being able to take next steps, whatever those next steps are, and wherever they are, with a bit of intention. And so that process for me and for us who are so disconnected from our body and our feelings, I think that is almost like the map home, and it's first steps towards being able to live in an integrated way. And when I mean integrated, I mean your mind, your body, your feelings all kind of functioning together to help you navigate. And yeah, I mean, that's like the work. And that's been the work for me, a work in progress. And all of these things that we just talked about, they're skill based. It's not magic. If you were fortunate to be raised in a family that had emotional awareness and attunement and could like model it for you and teach it to you as you're growing up, then you grow up knowing how to do this. But I think the majority of people, myself included, did not grow up in families who modeled proper, like integrated, holistic self being. Like, just didn't. And so it's piecemealing and learning these skills one at a time, and they provide a foundation for us to be able to like integrate everything together. I don't know if that makes sense. Like it's a big
Yeah.
answer to your to your question, and it's like
Yeah.
lifelong work.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a big question, you know. It's like we want there to be a simple, neat
Yes.
little
Yeah.
answer, but
Package it and then put it on your Instagram page and then that's it. That's all you have to do. But it's not, I feel like that's been the work. I used to be terrified feeling my feelings. Now I'm like, oh, okay, I'm better at it. I'm better at it, and I could use the information. I can put words to my emotions and feelings, and when I do that, I don't know, engaging parts of my brain that are, are not necessarily online when I'm totally dysregulated. And
Mhm.
so, yeah.
Yeah, and that just comes back to like being present and being able to feel the whole human experience, you know, the good,
And
the
the good,
bad.
bad, the ugly, yes, all of it. It's true. I mean, we spend so much time running away and avoiding and like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. I'm gonna like me. And so facing, being, like, standing, experiencing, allowing, and then, all right, deciding what's my next step. What am I gonna do? Am I gonna yell back? Am I gonna like walk away? I'm gonna just take a breath and let it be, and they become choices. They
Yes.
previously they weren't choices. They were just, okay, you did this and I did this, and then next thing you know.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like that is such a nuanced answer and such a great way to talk about that empowerment and having that choice that, you know, we don't always realize that we have. And I think this is kind of a great place to start wrapping up. And I have one final question for
Yeah, of
you.
course.
You know, now that you're sort of settled in this new track and, you know, you're working towards the future and everything, when you look back at young Mushi,
Yeah.
you know, what are you protecting in your life now that
Yeah.
that younger version of you would have just sacrificed for
Yeah.
achievement?
Yeah. That younger version of me did everything. I played it super duper. I would gauge for safety and play for safety all the time, anticipating and planning. And so much of my bandwidth went for creating and controlling for safety. And the current me just kind of has figured out that I don't really control anything. I barely control me on a good day. Like I that if I can do that, I mean, if I got enough sleep and I don't, have a find not fighting a upper respiratory infection or whatever, I can control me and like the behaviors that I show. The young person I was like running ahead, not give it a second thought. And so I just yeah, that's I would have just told myself to slow it down. You don't need to make sure it's always okay all the time. Say you'll be okay. You'll navigate it. You'll find your way.
Ah, that's such a beautiful message. And yeah, I see a lot of myself in there. A lot of the listeners are going to really feel that and see themselves too. And, you know, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for bringing your perspective today. This has been a delightful conversation.
I
And
thank you for having me. It's
yeah,
been, wonderful to get to know you and to talk with you, and I hope that we can continue doing so
yeah,
along the arc of our trajectories.
yeah, our new careers.
Yeah.
So, one final thing, if anybody's interested in connecting with you or reaching you, where's the best place to find you?
Um, I y- I work well, it's probably my work website, which would be South
Okay.
Bay Therapy Works .com, or my LinkedIn profile. That's pretty open. So those
Excellent.
would be the
Thank you.
places.
I will put
Thank you.
those in the show notes. And then, yes, once again, thank you for sharing your time with me today. And I am so looking forward to future conversations.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.